having that sort of inferiority bit, which everyone's got, some people, all of us have got some sort of problem somewhere. I think you overcompensate with it by being better at what you do, trying to prove yourself and being better. And I think when you do become lazy, you think, well, I'm not better, I'm sweating here a bit.
G'day everybody and welcome to Behind the Break. My name is CJ, aka CJ the Pineapple Drummer, aka Modus from Chaosis. And today I am ridiculously excited to have a chat with this gentleman because he has had an amazing career and a very long-standing career as well. Basically is regarded as one of UK's most prolific drum educators, with many of his students to have gone on and do some absolutely incredible things, not only nationally, but internationally as well. He's taught people such as Phil Collins, Derrick McKenzie, Graham Broad, Ralph Salmins, John Colin, and Nick Sims. His career has spanned well over 4 decades, and basically is regarded as a huge expert of the big band style of drumming. He's worked extensively with Ken Mackintosh, Ray Ellington, Bob Miller, Edmundo Ros, big band as well, and basically is one of the few UK drummers to have ever worked alongside the legendary Buddy Rich, and he was a support act for him at the UK Lewisham Jazz Festival in 1986. Ladies and gentlemen, I have the one and only Mr. Lloyd Ryan. How are you today, good sir?
Right, how can I follow that? What a build-up, eh? God, blimey. I thought you'd never stop.
I believe me, I had to shorten that too.
Yes, oh yeah, there's another 100 people on that list, isn't there? And there's a list on Facebook, actually, of all the people I played for on tour. That's only halfway. And I gave modesty, stopped me from going any further. It's ridiculous. I mean, it's been a wonderful career, really, for me. I have to say, I don't know what I would have done without it. Well, I know I've been working in the supermarket or something, stacking shelves or something of that nature. So, from that point of view, it's been a lifesaver.
Yeah, definitely. And I tell you what, it is a career I think a lot of drummers wish they had, and a career that a lot of drummers, I guess, see as like a goal where it's like, when I get to that age, I want to have a bio that amazing from top to tail. It's just something like I look at it like that and I go, God, I hope when I'm that age I've had such an illustrious career like yourself. So it's a very, very, very impressive resume. So I've got to ask first. Oh, sorry.
I think you're not actually aware of it. When you're doing it, you're not aware of what you're doing. I mean, I was playing for people that I'd seen on television when I was at school. And there I am playing for them, 20 years later, whatever it was. And I think it's good to look at it and say, oh, this guy's done this wonderful career. But when you're actually doing it, you've got the responsibility of, in those days, you're expected to be able to sight read. You play for a show, a cabaret, whatever it was, and they wouldn't have the time to spend hours rehearsing. You'd have to get it and do it and have a quick rehearsal and make a good job of it. And I think you don't really have time to stop and think, wow. But looking back, I think, well, did I really do all that? Did I really play all that? Was I that? Did I have this success? You know what I mean? So it's not something that it's easy to quantify when you're somebody looking at it outside. Say, oh wow, I want to do that. But when you're actually doing it, you don't really think about what's going on. All you're thinking about is, well, I've got the electricity bill for a start. We've got to find. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Keep working. You know what I mean?
At what point in your career did you look back and start to like reflect on what you had done? Do you ever really kind of do that?
No, I don't think, CJ. No, I don't think I ever did. I don't think, even only talking like this, I reflect. I'm probably in some ways a bit like Buddy Rich, and Buddy Rich was never interested in what had gone by. He was only interested in what he was doing that day or what he was planning to do. And I think I'm by nature a bit like that. Of course, as I've got older, the work scene isn't like it was when I was doing 7 nights a week and 30 pupils a week and recording sessions and all that. It's not like that anymore. I'm still busy, but I'm not busy in the way that I was then. So I've got more time to reflect really on what it was, what I had. But I think I probably, if I'm really honest with you, CJ, I think, well, everyone's done it. Everyone's the same. It's only when I look back and think, wow. I mean, I've done over 700 drum clinics in this country, including Jersey and Germany and that. And I think everybody's done that, over a period of 20 odd years, whatever it was. But they haven't. Do you know what I'm saying? If you take my point, I just think that, no, they haven't. And I was fairly unique with the kids' TV shows I did as a guest and all. I did about 10 children's TV shows, British TV. And I just thought that, well, everyone can do this. Everyone's done it, but they haven't. And I think I'm not trying to say to people that there's not a chance. Everyone's got a chance. Maybe you should ask me how I started. I think that would be very interesting for your.
Well, that's exactly it. Over your very amazing spanning career, I've got to ask, what are, in your mind, whether it's personal or whether it's actual career moments, but what have been some of your breakthrough moments as an artist, especially as a drummer?
Well,
and I'd love to start, because we talked about this off camera the week before we've done this, and you did kind of tell me the story a bit. So I would love for you to go over that story again of how you actually started playing.
Well, for me, it's a success story from somebody who had no education to start with, no formal education. I went to school. I left school at 15, as we did in those days in England, when you didn't have much of an education. I had no direction where I was going whatsoever. As I say, I left school at 15, had no direction where I was going. I did work in a film studio for a while, just as a gopher. And then, like the big quirk of fate, really, how the fate works for you. One day I was in work, doing whatever I had to do, and basically a guy walked over to me and he said, Dave, his name was, I can remember his name to now, he's probably long dead now, but anyway. And he said to me, do you know anyone who plays the drums? We're looking for a drummer for our rock and roll band. That was when rock and roll was really starting off big time, And I don't know why I said it, CJ, but I said, yeah, I can play the drums. I'll have a go at that. And he said, well, that's a coincidence, isn't it? He said, well, do you want to come to have a tryout with the band? And I said, yeah, when's that? He said, well, next Monday we're playing we're rehearsing in a school. Because in England those days, the schools used to let rooms out in the evening. The London County Council, it was called, and they used to let the rooms out. It cost nothing to have, as part of the deal, as it were. So anyway, I said, yeah. Now this was Wednesday, the week before the Monday, of course. So anyway, I went back to my mum and I said, Mum, because I was still living at home, I was only 15 and a half, it was. And I said, okay, I'd like to have a go at the drums. She went, what? Now, you've got to remember that I'd failed at everything, you see. So the point is, somebody taking up the drums could be like saying, I'm going to fly around the moon and be an astronaut, you know what I mean? So, oh, yeah, well done, now come on. First of all, you've got to get off the chair, you know what I mean? But your backside off the chair. So anyway, on the Friday, I said, well, would you lend me some money? Apparently they sell some drums in the local record shop in Clapham Junction, you see. So anyway, she lent me £10. So I went down to the shop and I walked in and I said, look, I want to start with drums. What do you normally start with? So the guy said, well, he showed me an Olympic snare drum made by Premier in those days, a cheap version, and a little snare drum stand and a pair of sticks, you see. So well, that's your start on a book called Tune a Day, which was about as useless, really, to be honest with you, but I could have had it upside down for you. But anyway, so I got the drum, they wrapped it in the brown paper parcel for me. I got it home, took it out. I didn't even know which side of the drum to play, but I figured that if I bashed the side of the bottom with the snares on it, I'd break it. So I thought I'll do it to the other side, you see. So anyway, that's how good I was. So I was making this hell of a din. So my dad said to me, why don't you get some lessons? There's got to be a proper way to play these things. I can hear the wrong way. He said, let's maybe do it properly. So I called up a drum teacher and I turned up for my first lesson on the following week. And sat me down and he said, do you want to learn to play properly, or would you like just to play for a party, learn a couple of little beats just to impress people? And I said, well, to be perfectly honest, I have never done anything properly. So I'd like to give this a go. And he said, right, that means you've got to learn to read music. Because it's much better if you do learn to read music for you. It opens up far more doors. And I thought, oh my God, I'm never going to do this because I'm not very good. I'm not very academic, you see. I thought I'm going to be a bit of a disaster with this. But I found I began to understand it. And when I sat down behind the drum kit, it was amazing. I felt comfortable. It didn't frighten me. It didn't, it had the Buddy Rich set up with this 2-floor top. The guy was obviously a Buddy Rich fan. I didn't know who Buddy Rich was up in those days, of course. And I felt I feel comfortable here. And then he showed me some stuff to do, and I went home and I practiced, and I came back the following week, and it went on like that. And after about 6 months, I can remember going for a lesson. There was another drummer in there, a guy, an older guy, much older than me, and he was chatting to my teacher. And my teacher said, "Oh, I'd like you to meet Lloyd, you see. He's only been playing a few months." He said, "Lloyd, play for Ronnie for you. Play something for Ronnie." And I don't know whether it doesn't matter if you see it or not. But I remember I'd learned to go triplets, you see. So I also managed to go. So I launched into. I'd only been playing a few months, and Ronnie turned around to my teacher, and he said, "How long has he been playing?" I said, "Well, 3 or 4 months, really, or something like that." But he's regular. He said, "Well, I think he's going to do very well." He said, "That's really pretty good for someone of that age to be able to play that fast, that quick." He said, "I think we're going to hear from him." Well, that guy turned out to be one of the top 4 drummers in England. And I never knew that. He was playing for an orchestra called the Jack Parnell Orchestra. Jack Parnell played with the Ted Heath Band, who toured America. He toured America and Australia as well with the Ted Heath Orchestra. So never met him since. That was the end, and never saw him again. But then I carried on. And what had happened to me, really, which is inspiring to some of your viewers, I hope, is that from being a nobody, some way I've become some way towards becoming a somebody. I didn't do it for that. I did it because I wanted to play. But people were taking notice of me. Even one of the top drummers in the country saying, "Well, I think we're going to hear from you." And I thought, well, I'm getting some attention here. And of course, but slightly before that, I've sort of got a little bit ahead. When I first got the snare drum on the Saturday, I had to go and have a meeting with the band on the Monday. This is going back a little while before I got the lessons, which I left out a little bit. And I turned up at the rehearsal room in the school, and I had a snare drum under my arm with a brown paper bag and all that bit, you see. And the first thing they said, I can hear their voices now, they said, "Where's the rest of the kit?" And I said, "I couldn't get it on the bus." They said, "Oh, all right, well, set it up." Yeah. Because they used to have a compartment on the bus where you could put luggage. And if they didn't want you to put, when I eventually got a bass drum, they wouldn't let me put that there. It took up too much room. You ended up waiting about 4 buses before someone would let you on. However, and they did a number called Guitar Boogie Shuffle, which was well known in England by a guitarist called Bert Weedon. It was like a shuffle, dum da dum da dum dum da dum da dum da dum da dum, And they said, "We're going to record it." And I will listen to it. And I thought, well, you might as well save your tape, because, to be honest with you, I haven't played. I didn't tell them that. So they started, dum, da, dum, da, dum. And I ended up, I went, it wasn't even as good as that, you know what I mean? It was like, anyway, the song come to an end, and by a miracle, we stopped together. And there was silence in the room. And then they said, "You can't play, can you?" I said, "No, I only bought it Saturday, and this is Monday. What do you expect?" They said, "Well, you're in luck. We only know Guitar Boogie Shuffle. So basically, we're all going to learn together." And that's when my dad said about getting the lessons. And of course, I stayed with the band for a while. We did a couple of little local gigs for no money. But so in a sense, I was really in a band before I could actually play. And that to me is start of many omens I've had in my life to keep me going, because it hasn't always been good in my life. It's not always been a magic carpet ride. Everybody's had problems in their lives, and of course, when you're watching a film, a life story in a film of a famous musician or entertainer, it skips on when they have a bad time. 30 seconds later, they've got a hit record or something like that. In real life, it's not like that. In real life, you've got to go and get the groceries. In real life, you've got to live that life. You haven't seen the future, you see. That's the problem. Whereas in the film, you would. So it's a fantasy land in many ways. But that's when you need that determination to carry on. That's when everything's against you. That's when you need that. And everything is, I have to say, 2 years later after starting to play, I turned professional. I did a summer season in a place called Newquay in Cornwall. And it was playing for a variety show. So I got great experience because I could read, because I'd learned to read at the beginning, because my teacher had said, well, you're going to have to learn to read. I'm so glad I did that, because I was able to play for this little show. It was only a summer show. It wasn't particularly brilliant. But I got 25 weeks of experience of accompanying acts on a stage. And then when I came back after the season finished, I went back to London again. And out of the blue, I got a phone call, because there used to be a newspaper called The Melody Maker, which had a 400,000 circulation a week, that did. And it used to have adverts on the end, drummer available, drummer wanted, and all that stuff. And I put an ad in, drummer available, just finished summer season, good reader. Someone rang me up and he said, we've got a show. We're doing a Theatre Royal in Stratford East in London. We're desperate for a drummer. We haven't got a drummer. We're in rehearsals and we're opening Saturday and it's now Thursday. So I said, right, where is it? I'll be there. And I got a taxi because I didn't have a car. And I got there in the car, in the taxi, and got into the pit and I went through the show. It was called What a Crazy World. Now, What a Crazy World was actually a hit record for a guy called Joe Brown in England. And it was a 4-month musical show based on the hit record. And they made a film of it as well, which may have well been shown in Australia. I don't know whether it was or not, called What a Crazy World. And I did okay with it. So in a sense, I was working from that 24-week season for another 4 months of the comeback. And then the advert was still in there, and I hadn't really forgotten about it. Someone rang me up and said, do you want to do a pantomime up in Darlington? And I thought, yeah, great. Seen unheard, really. Unheard, it's not seen, And here I go, getting on the train with all my drums. And I was only about 18, very young. And all the way up to Darlington, which is up in the north of England, probably 200 odd miles from London. At that age, nowadays, people go down the road, people say, you all right? You okay? Did you manage to get the train all right? In the old days, with no nanny state, you get your backside kicked, you get in there. Yeah, and I did a pantomime for 8 weeks. And I'll tell you how hard it was. The weather up here, up in the north in those days was worse than it is now. We had thick snow, maybe 3 feet of snow. And I got kicked out of the digs I was staying in. The digs are what we call in England for the room, because I went back for Christmas, back to London, and then came back for the show on Boxing Day. And when I got there, the woman said, here's your bags packed, you can go. I said, hang on a minute, what's happened? She said, you know what you've done. You've been stealing off of one of the guys in there. I said, pardon? I don't know what you're talking about. Now, if that had been now, I'd have really got in there and said, right, who is it out of you people have done this? But I didn't. I was only 18. And when you're young, you think everybody's right. You know what I mean? And so there I was, trudging in the snow with a suitcase with nowhere to stay. Damn. On Boxing Day afternoon before the show. And I knocked on somebody's door. And I said, do you take in lodgers? She said, well, yeah, in the summer I do, but not now. I said, well, I've got nowhere to stay. So she said, come in. And she said, this is what it's going to cost. I said, I'm here for now about 6 weeks, I said. So she said, that's fine, yeah, blah, blah, blah. And it was very austere, it was very cold. And I said, what's that light in the corner there? She said, that's a fire. That's your fire. I thought it was a glowworm. I said, blimey, what? There's no heat, freezing. But I did it. I never told my parents. When I went back to London, how they do. I said, fine. If they'd have known I was trudging around the streets with a suitcase at 18 years of age with nowhere to live, and the responsibility of the show. And the funny thing is, the star of the show was a guy called Mike Berry, And Mike Berry had quite a successful career as a pop singer, and he was an actor. He ended up in a lot of TV series in England. About 15 years ago, 20 years ago, my son's mother was working in a pub, and Mike Berry came in.
Whoa.
Okay. And it's 40 years later. And anyway, so Rachel, sorry, not Rachel, I can't remember her name now. Anyway, she got chatting to Mike Berry because she knew he was a singer. And I had mentioned, she said, you might know somebody, she said, who worked with you a long, long time ago in a pantomime, drummer called Lloyd Ryan. And he went, the best thing in the pantomime, he was.
Wow.
After all those years. And I don't know where it came. I don't know where it came from. And I don't understand how I became so good. It's not an ego talking now. It's just a fact I don't understand, because I did a tour of American bases in England when there were a lot of American bases there, and they used to have cabarets on. And I've only been playing about 4 years, really, and I stayed professional, out of work sometimes, worked a bit, one thing to another, went to Sweden and blah, 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 to play a bit. But I did this tour of about 10 bases, and the act was called the Korean Kittens. And they were an American act, and they had a saxophone player from America with them, and they were obviously from Korea, the girls. And we had a rehearsal, and then we did the first base at Mildenhall, American Army base in Mildenhall. And the saxophone player afterwards, he said, the girls want to speak to you in the dressing room. And I thought, oh, what have I done wrong? What have I done wrong? And anyway, so I went in, knocked on the door, and I went in. And they said, when you play, they couldn't speak very good English, said, when you play, we fly. We're flying when you play. And I thought, what? I said, we're flying. It was a compliment. You see, I didn't, but I, to be honest with you, CJ, I didn't have a clue where this came from. But I have to stress to everybody out there, I practiced. And I'm talking about practice. I'm talking about anything from spread out over a day, 3 to 4 hours practice. And I'm talking about practice, not doodling. Now, I want to point out to the people watching this, when people say they practice 6 or 7 hours a day, you can't practice 6 or 7 hours a day. Your mental capacity would not take it, because there's a difference between practicing and what I call repetition. Right. You hear this okay? Okay.
Yes.
Doodling or repetition is me sitting there going, well, you can do that all day long. And that's a double stroke into it. I could do all that. I do that for half an hour because I was trying to be as fast as Buddy Rich, and I did end up as fast as Buddy Rich. Many things, but not much use really. But that's not practicing. Practicing is when you get a drum part, a piece of music, or whatever you're looking at, and you can't play it and you don't understand it. And at the end of the hour, whatever it is, you do understand it, and you can play a little bit. Maybe not good enough to play in a band, maybe not good enough to play really well, but you can do it. That takes a lot of mental energy, and you'll become very tired because you're concentrating very hard. So the idea of practicing 5-6 hours a day going, it's not practicing.
Yeah. No,
You want to do that.
No, I get, and the curious question I did want to kind of give a bit more context, because it sounds like to me it was like when you went from getting a few lessons, it was then putting yourself out there as much as you could, and like whatever jobs come your way. And whatever jobs kind of came your way, and it kind of sounded like one would lead into the other, would lead into the other. Now, curiously, that's what you were doing. But say, for context, at that point in time, what were other drummers doing as well? Like, for a sense of like, did you see or know other drummers that were at your age that were doing similar kind of things and not getting the gigs, or were they getting the shows?
Oh, it's a good question, because most people in those days followed the pop situation.
Right.
I mean, I went for an audition with a band, Shane Fenton and the Fentones, never got the job. But my dear friend Bobby Elliott got the job, and 3 months later we joined the Hollies, a band called the Hollies, which I know I've been to Australia, and Bob I still keep in touch. And he got the job, and he always says, and I was there with Keith Moon in the queue. Keith Moon was in the queue. I was in the Mickey Fleet in the queue. None of us got the job. Bob got the job. He always reminds me, I got the job, and Keith Moon was in the thing with you, all that bit. But at the end of the day, I think, I don't know, really, and I remember going for another audition, which I didn't get, and the guy that got the job was a guy called Carl Palmer. And Carl, of course, played for ELP in the end, Emerson, Lake and Palmer. And we actually share the same birthday, Carl and I. March the 20th. Right. Whenever I see him, he tells his girlfriend or partner, we share the same birthday, Lloyd and I, you know what I mean? So, but I didn't follow that path. I think I followed the path of a loner, because I am by nature, why it worked for me, I think, is because I am by nature a loner. That's interesting, because I suppose in some ways, CJ, I'm two different people. I'm the kind of boy that would sit in those days on my own and not really have too many friends, non-drinker, non-smoker, so I didn't socialise in that much. So drumming was ideal for someone like that, because it's, you're a loner with playing. And yet, on the other hand, the other side of me, I was a show-off, because when I started doing drum clinics, I found that I could talk to an audience with a microphone like I'm talking to you and entertain them and make them laugh. And I could stand in front of anything up to 200 people or maybe more. You see, it's like a schizophrenic thing that you don't really know what you are. You think, but I like my own company, and so drumming is ideal. If you see what I mean. So anyone out there that's doesn't socialise very much, because it is a lonely thing, because any friends you have, if you're going to be really dedicated to a musical instrument, nobody else can share that other than you when you're starting out. You are on your own with that. And, if you've got a mate come round, let's go out for a drink, or let's watch TV, or let's go to pictures. No, I wanted to practice. So don't think it all came easy, CJ, because it didn't, because I worked very hard. And I blistered my hands up, I had cut my hands with playing the sticks, with the drumming. It was hard work. And I think to a certain extent, I still don't look back in my playing. I think I only look forward all the time. And how the new techniques a lot of these guys have got with what we used to call grace notes, but they call them ghost notes now, where you can hardly hear them. They're very quiet. And my pupils asked me how do you do that? And I said, well, one way to practice that really is accented notes, but play the non-accented notes so quiet you can hardly hear them. So if you're going paradiddle, can you just about hear that underneath?
Yeah.
So that's back the old school again, because that's the way we were taught to play, where you made the accents stand out. They had to be sort of, not like that. It's got to be more. See what I'm saying? And that's the way we did that, with the stick high and the other beats very low. So consequently, if you're doing a sort of you see that? My sticks are only where they were when I was going. So the preparation for it, CJ, is not what you think it is. The preparation is building up the rudiments to be able to play them very quiet, with the accent standing out. Because if you take what they call power rock, where you're doing the paradiddles, just basic paradiddles, the rock beats. If you practice the paradiddle on the snare drum, if you go right, if I put an accent on 2 and 4, you've got. So then you apply it to. See what I'm saying? So it becomes quite easy then. to be able to do that. And that was just the paradiddle in para rock is, if you're not careful, sounds like a paradiddle. You've got to disguise it, by opening the hi-hat, and so you make it so it doesn't sound like a paradiddle. But I give that a demonstration of making it sound like a paradiddle. But you can hear where I'm coming from when it comes to those as grace notes. So learning in the old days was very much that style of making sure that the beats that because that drummer that, as I was saying, when I was having my lesson, and that drummer that was there, the good drummer, he sat down, and of course to me it sounded amazing. He went, and to me I thought, Jesus Christ, really fast. And my teacher went, how about that then? When he left, well, I find that quite easy now. And I thought, right, that's what I'm aiming for. Is it right? And I spent 2 hours a day building up the speed. So it was all wrong, because speed is not that important. Some of my favourite drummers, one of my favourite drummers that I'm friends with is Jack Bruno. Jack was the drummer with Tina Turner for so many years, and also Joe Cocker, and I don't know what Jack's doing at the moment. I haven't spoken to him for a while, but and Jack would play. Can you hear my bass drum? Okay.
Yes.
Jack would be a great object lesson to me in all the technique I've got. You fly around all the crossovers, 100 miles an hour, which you do on drum clinics. But when he's playing for Tina, he plays something like this. Make the song like that. That's all he do.
You know what I call that?
Anyone could do that.
It's the money beat. It's the beat
exactly. Yes, the same way you are, isn't it? You can't play the electric bill, talking the electric bill. But you see where I'm coming from. That, and I'm quite happy to do that. I mean, tonight I'll be doing so. It's a blues stroke, a bit of rock as well. I will be playing very simple. It's only when we do Black Magic Woman, Santana thing, where I play all the Latin stuff and do the solo. Other than that, I'm quite happy to sit there and just do that, because you're allowing the bass player. You see, by leaving space with the bass drum, you're allowing the bass player to play. You're not trying to play complicated stuff. I can play as complicated as you want on the bass drum, but the real skill is not doing it. So the idea when you're practicing, for everyone out here, practice as much as you can, as clever stuff as you can, then cut 80% of it out. And only use it very sparsely here and there when you need it. Like if you've learned to go the double bass drum, you might go. You just put it in every now and then. I did it too much then because I didn't want to go too long. But you might only throw that in about 4 times in a number.
Yeah.
Because you can do something, it doesn't mean to say you can't do it. It's not being able to speak Mandarin and talking Mandarin in Liverpool. Everyone's going to go, what? What are you talking about?
And I think the thing that I'm curious to know too is, like, you were getting lessons, and obviously there was a drive to want to play drums, but when especially when you start, it's such an undiscovered world at the time that anyone kind of starts. So did you give yourself direction, or did your teacher give you direction and help you kind of know that this is where you're going to go and this is what you should do? Or did you just put yourself out there and kind of figured it out through life experience?
I think I did. I don't think, I mean, I got to the stage. It was all my own ideas, and I made a lot of mistakes. And I would have been, if I'd have played like I'm playing there, like I just played for you, those days I'd have got a lot more of the gigs that I didn't get because I didn't even go for them, because I thought it was boring. I was more interested in being busy. But, I mean, there's one point I called to mind. I went to a couple of different teachers. I went to one guy called Max Abrams, who was a bit of a con man. Actually, he was a good teacher. He was an old-fashioned drummer, and he taught a lot of people. Simon Phillips was one of his pupils. You know Simon? Yeah, he was one of his
Toto and quite a few others.
Yeah, there was a pupil. So was Eric Delaney, who was a well-known drummer in this country. But I went to him, and he was the one who showed me how to play the accents, making sure that, So I learned something from him. But I went to another teacher, and it was played with a band called the Skyrockets over here, which was a good big band. And anyway, I went in for the lesson. He had a drum studio at the back of his shop, a music shop, and he was highly rated. And anyway, I booked up a lesson with him to think get some more ideas, you see. And I went in there, and he was just saying, "What do you want to do?" I said, "Well, I can, I'll leave it to you. You're the teacher." And the phone rang, and he went outside to answer the phone. And while he was out there, I went. All that sort of stuff, you see. Just normal, just sort of sitting there pissing about. Excuse me, everyone, but playing about. We're connected there, But he came back in. He said, "You better go." I thought he was annoyed. He said, "I can't teach you anything."
Right.
He said, "If I could play that fast, I'd be very happy. And that's slick." He said, "I'll be very happy." So I can't teach you anything. So don't waste your money with me. So I can help you a little bit, but not to your level. He said, "You're going to be something quite good, So where do you go from there?
Yeah.
when you get, that's the point I'm making. It's like being number one in the charts. Where do you go from there? You're only going to go down at some point. See what I'm saying? If you remember the charts, well, they got them in Queensland, but I mean.
So where did you go? Where did you go then? Like, if you come to that point where there are people.
Well, we didn't have the internet, of course, then, so you had to get as many books as you could. In my studio, I must have 60, 70 books in my studio, going right back to the 60s. And I'm looking at them now. I've got piles of music I've collected. I've got drum parts for Count Basie, Buddy Rich, Louis Billson, Duke Ellington, pop songs, Sting with Vinnie Colaiuta, Dave Weckl parts. I've got so many drum parts all written out. So I can come in here, if I want to practice, pick out some complex parts, learn them, and then play along with the best bands I'm going to play with. Actually better than actually going out and playing with the local band, who ain't going to be really anywhere at that level in many cases, you see. So it's a wonderful thing that learning to read like that and study the reading like that. It's very important. So the trouble is nowadays, a lot of people don't have the patience to learn. They just want to learn a rock beat and go out and play in the band straight away and copy what somebody else is doing. But if the drummer had done that on the record they're copying, there wouldn't have been anyone to copy from.
Exactly.
Because obviously, you see what I'm saying. Hear what I'm saying. So I think that it's very important to do that. But I think I found my own direction. I don't know. I suppose you could say, without too fine a point on it, I was actually born to do this. Because when I left my day job, as a so-called day job, I looked around and said, I'm never going to come back to doing this again. And I never did. I'm still here after all these years. In fact, so much so, I'm here this age, we're still talking now.
Exactly.
I'm still teaching. I'm still rehearsing tonight.
I'm very curious to ask, was there ever a point where you came close to coming back to it, where it was an option? It's always an option, but did you ever come to a point where you came very close to, well, not giving up per se, but having to take that step back to have to go back to doing a day job to help support what you were doing?
I think, yes, that's another good question as well. I think there were points when, this is really being brutally honest, there were points when I thought, well, I'm not going anywhere, but I can't do anything else, and I need to earn a bit of money because I'm supposed to be doing this for a living, so I'm carrying on. So I just went out and did rubbish gigs like stag shows and all that, where you're playing for strippers and all that. But, in those days, 10 quid a gig was equivalent of probably 80 or 90 now, But you see what I mean? But looking at it, it was rubbish. Musically, it was rubbish. It was just a pianist in you. And so but it was, again, good experience to be able to play this stuff and play for the strippers and keep your eyes on the music. Keep your eyes on the music.
Oh, that's a lesson of focus, that's for sure.
Other than a couple of distractions.
Oh, you couldn't get away with that in the classroom any day of the week. God.
Classroom, what's that? I don't remember that. That was in the midst of time. But no, but I don't think I ever actually ever did actually give up because I couldn't actually do anything else. And also, I'd given myself a choice to do this. And then, so you go through a period of doing a lot of rubbish. But I think that brings me to another point where, which is good for people to listen to, maybe, is that if you only want when you come into the music business to make a lot of money, that's not the motivation. The motivation should be to be playing well. And then if you're lucky, the money will come along. And never mind what you do as well, because if it's a gig that you think is not a very good band, it's good experience, because if you can rise above that band and guide them on and make them sound really much better, which is what I try to do, then it's better for your playing. If you're working with a load of musicians that are really good, top quality musicians, you haven't got to do anything. You just play and it works. But when you're playing with people that are not very good, when you try and do something too clever, it sounds out of place because they don't pick it up. They don't listen. They don't follow you, you see. This is the point. So you've got to learn, I'm playing with this particular band. They're never going to be any good, but I'm earning a few quid out of it, so I'll just do what I do. You see what I mean? So you adapt as you go along, but you must never mind what you do. In other words, never mind what gig you get. As long as you go out and play and you're setting the kit up and you're playing, and, a lot of things you can't teach when you're teaching people. One of them is the problems you're going to have on a gig where you can't hear the bass player, or you can't hear the singer, or you can't hear your bass drum. All those things you don't get when you're practicing in a room because it's all geared up to listen to. When you go out on a gig, maybe the vocal mic isn't loud enough, so you're having to almost guess what's happening. And you gain experience over the years with that. And those things are very, very important to do, really.
As I always kind of say to my students too, that 1 hour show is the equivalent of 100 hours practice, because it's always a different environment and there's different things that you learn every time that you do a show. No two shows are the same, and I feel like it's a different element of foundations in playing wise, but then being in a group and listening for everything out in front of you. And as you said, what happens if you're reliant on trying to hear the vocalist and you've been so reliant on that at rehearsals, you get to the show, all of a sudden you can't hear them. Like, then what do you do? Then you're really learning on the spot there for sure.
Exactly. And you've got no time to only got one chance to get it right.
Yeah, exactly.
And 100 chances to get it wrong, you know what I mean? But, I think really you were asking me about looking back. I would say what I don't understand about me really was, there's an old saying, fools rush in where angels fear to tread. I think I was a fool. I just rushed in. I mean, I went for what was one of the top jobs in the country, and I've been playing 6 years. And that was the Ken Mackintosh Orchestra at the Empire Leicester Square, which was a big ballroom in London. There were 2 bands on. And one of the support band was led by a guy called Don Lang, who I'd seen on a TV show when I was at school. And this was the main band I was playing for. And I turned up there, called up, managed to get hold of somebody I worked who was in the band, asked for an audition. He said, right, I'll sort it out. And I got an audition. And I turned up and the parts were there and we did some Buddy Rich stuff. It was a dance band, really, but he liked to do a bit of big band jazz. And I sat down and his son, Andy Mackintosh, ended up, believe it or not, with Buddy Rich band, Louis Belson band. He went to America, Andy, a saxophone player. He ended up with Buddy's band. He ended up with Louis Belson's band, with Maynard Ferguson's band. He really was the top of the tree, this saxophone player, but he played a bit of drums as well. And when I set the drums up, he was at the back and he said to me, look, I like you. He said, he's only 15, this kid. He was only 15 then, and he's dead now. He died about 4 years ago. So he was only 15. And he said to me, my dad likes it now. Don't tinker about on the drums, play them. I thought, right. I thought, okay, you've asked for it. And he counted off the number, 1, 2, so I went, boom, bang, ba-dum, ba-da-ba-ba, And he said, he was at the back of the Empire Leicester Square, and he said, Christ, he said, you hit the wall behind. He said, he'll have the job. He'll get the job.
Wow.
And when we finished, he said, come into my room, the band. He said, when can you start? I said, it's Friday today. I've got a gig tomorrow. Start Sunday. He said, right, start Sunday. This is the money. Be here for the afternoon. Be here at 12 o'clock because we've got an afternoon show to do. And I said, I got the job. And I went back. I was living with my mum and dad then, of course. I was only 21, 22, something like that. I wasn't really very old. and I've been playing, a few years, but all not to that level. And my mum waited up. I got the job. Now, I'd heard that band on the radio. One of the reasons I wanted to go to do an audition with that band, because I'd heard late night broadcasts that we did on radio, on BBC Radio, live broadcasts, and I liked them. Well, I'd only been in the band 3 weeks. I've got 2 broadcasts coming up on Maida Vale Studios for the BBC Radio 2. And I was the drummer on it, playing in the BBC at that level with a 17-piece band, you see. And then another couple of months later, we had some more broadcasts, and there were guest singers, Long John Baldry, Madeleine Bell, who were top quality people. Long John Baldry, Madeleine Bell was in a band called Blue Mink, and a very good singer, black girl, very good singer. And they were the guest singers, and they just give you the parts, the drum parts. You put them up, and they go 1, 2, 3, 4, bang, whatever it was. And they'd all had chart records. And Long John Baldry had just been #1 in the British Hit Parade with Let the Heartaches Begin. And there am I sitting there. It was 17 guys, early 20s. I was one of the youngest, apart from one other drummer. I was the youngest big band drummer in that situation in the country. And I'd come from nothing. Do you know what I mean?
100%.
I got the sack after a year, by the way, for not getting on with the band leader.
Oh, right.
And I got the sack, and I went straight to another job. But the drummer in that job wanted to go there. He'd been there before. And I went to that. We swapped over. And it was a better job in some ways, even though it wasn't that well known. We were doing another circuit of ballrooms. And I found out that Clive Sharrett, the trombone player, told me when I played in his band, he formed the Glenn Miller band. He was the trombonist with Ken Mackintosh. He said, when the other drummer started on the Sunday night, Ken Mackintosh turned round to the trombone player and said, I've made a mistake, haven't I? Meaning with me going, I've made a mistake. And I went back. He called me up to do Hammersmith Palais in London. And I went back for the broadcast, doing the radio shows and all that bit. You know what I mean? So basically, I carried on playing on and off for the guy for years, for 20 more years on and off.
And
so it was no hard.
Did you find getting that gig?
I was difficult. That was the problem was, really, this is something you've all got to learn out there. It's how you get on with people. I was difficult because I followed the Buddy Rich thing, all the Buddy Rich, the arrogant. I was a little bit over the top, and I didn't get on with the people. They said, Lloyd's a great drummer, but, he's hard to get on with. So much so that 20-odd years later, 30 years later, I was playing with somebody who played with somebody that knew me from 25 years before. And he said to this guy, how are you getting on with Lloyd? He said, great, good guy, on time, great drummer. He said, well, blimey, he's changed then, because he was difficult. He was difficult all those years ago, you know what I mean? So that's another lesson to learn on there that I'm speaking to everybody now. The youngsters that are taking up drumming. Don't be egotistical, get up there and do it. Be humble with it all. And don't let people take the mickey out of you. Don't let people walk over you. If you're good, you're good. But there's a great saying that one of the old timers told me when I've been playing a few years. He said, let your playing do the talking. One good one to remember. Wow. Let your playing do the talking. Because, if you're going to big yourself up all the time, you've got to be able to match it up. If you don't big yourself up, when you actually do it and do well, they go, wow, this guy's good. You know what I mean? Because they don't expect it. But I made mistakes like everybody. I didn't get jobs, and I did get jobs, and I didn't, and I did. And I got lazy at one point when I turned professional, put a bit of weight on, didn't really practice as much as I should, took it all for granted a bit until I got a wake-up call somewhere along the line and got back to getting myself together with the diet and all that. But, everyone goes through this. It's and if I can help people not go through that, CJ, then I'm happy to do this,
One of the things I did want to ask you is, you did touch on it for a second there and you didn't mention it. And I would love to ask if it's not too personal, but you said there was a moment there where you were saying that you kind of took it for granted a little bit with where you were. And you said that you kind of had a moment that was like a wake-up call. Could you explain what that wake-up call was and how you got that wake-up call and what made you realize what was going on?
Yeah, I think one of the wake-up calls was when I couldn't do my trousers up because I got too fat for a start. That was a definite wake-up call.
That's a sign.
two fat drummers. I mean, a lot of fat drummers about now, but sadly for them, seriously now, they don't live to be old people. That's the problem. You see, diet and all that's very important to your playing, and exercise and all that's very important to do it right. It's all part of the job. But the wake up call was, I don't know. I think we've all got. We have to be able to tell the truth to ourselves. If you're kidding yourself, you're only kidding yourself. If you see what I'm saying, if you're telling lies to everybody else, you're really bigging yourself up, or you're kidding yourself. Really, I think I'm probably very good at self-awareness of what's wrong with me. I probably have maybe even an inferiority complex in some respects of what I look like. Maybe I don't look as what I'd like to look like, and I think I read an article about Marilyn Monroe, the famous film star. She actually thought she was quite ugly, and that she was a lousy actress. Isn't that strange? So that was in her mind. That's why she married men that were intellectuals, that were very clever. They weren't superhuman. They weren't muscle men. They were ordinary blokes that were, but she wanted to be a good actress. Another one like that was Jane Mansfield. Actually, remember Jane Mansfield, a big star. Jane Mansfield was, who died in a horrific car crash. She could speak 5 languages, and yet she was the busty blonde, with all the bit, that was, and she could speak 5 languages. Wow. But everyone saw her as the dumb blonde. It's quite so. I think having that sort of inferiority bit, which everyone's got, some people, all of us have got some sort of problem somewhere. I think you overcompensate with it by being better at what you do, trying to prove yourself and being better. And I think when you do become lazy, you think, well, I'm not better. I'm sweating here a bit. I think once I went to a recording session, I was given a recording session to do with somebody, and I didn't do a good job. And I got paid, but I didn't ever do another job for them, and they had to replace me, get another drummer in to do it. And it was a simple thing that I had to do. And because I've been so complicated with all too much technique, the simple stuff like I'm telling you about Jack Bruno, I can remember what it was as well. It was something where you open the hi-hat when you play the steel, you go. And I couldn't do that open hi-hat together. This is a long time ago. We're talking about way in the midst of time. And I struggled with it. And the guy particularly wanted that. And I couldn't do it.
Right.
No, I couldn't do it. And I looked back and I thought, it's the simple. There was a famous comedian in England called Tommy Cooper. Big bumbling great fool, but he was very clever. And he said to me, if you take care of the small details, the big details will take care of themselves. All the simplistic stuff that I didn't do, I started doing. I started looking at different role models rather than Buddy Rich and Gene Krupa, and a man I knew very well, Louis Belson, who I like very much. I got on great with Louis, but they all had their niche in the business. Buddy Rich had to do the drum solo. Buddy Rich, but I have to say that Buddy Rich was a lot more musical than a lot of people give him credit for, because it wasn't all technique. If you listen to his playing, he is playing the tune. It is an extension of what I would try to get across to my pupils about singing a tune. It's that same thing, really, CJ, which is very important. That's another subject we can talk about, if you like, now to do that. The story, I was a highly technical player, as you can hear. I can do 100 miles an hour, all that. So can a lot of people if they practice. But I listened to drummers who I thought, I can't play that good. I can't play the way they play. I'm technically better than them, but I can't do it, you see. So anyway, I went to Ronnie Scott's club in London to watch somebody I knew in a band called The Gas. And I went upstairs. It was upstairs, a different club upstairs. Anyway, I watched them play. The drummer was a guy called Godfrey McClay, who plays for an act called the M People. They've had a lot of hits. I don't know about in Australia, but they're big in Europe, M People. Anyway, American act. And I loved this player. And I went up to him afterwards. I was introduced to him. And the guy who I knew in the band introduced me, said, this is Lloyd Ryan. And Godfrey said, oh, you're the guy with the great technique, aren't you? I said, no, hang on a minute, Godfrey. I forget the great technique. I can't play the way you play. You play much better with a band than I do. What do you do? And he said, well, it's simple. I don't have your technique, supposedly. He said, no, really. But he said, I've got enough technique to play what's in my head. I said, well, yeah. And he said, but all I do is I sing the tune. And I play the tune that I'm playing with the rhythms that fit the tune and the feels that fit the tune. Simple. It sounds simple, but it's not.
Simple but complicated at the same time.
Yeah, so I took that on board. And what I did was I went home. Now, I don't know about Australia, whether you have nurses. There's a lot of expats in Australia because it was England, and a lot of British people came to Australia. But whether the young children or the youngsters or any drummers for that have nursery rhymes, like Jack and Jill, Humpty Dumpty. Well, Jack and Jill, basically Jack and Jill went up the hill to fetch a pail of water. Jack put down, broke his ground, da, 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 da. Very simple. And I thought, where do I begin with doing this thing that Godfrey told me about? So I thought, well, if I take a nursery rhyme and I sing the nursery rhyme in my head and play it on the drum. So it will come out like... If you follow the tune of Jack and Jill, that is Jack and Jill.
Yeah.
So then I thought, let's try put a tom-tom in. So starts to open it up a little bit. And then I've even more. Took it out, added the bass drum and all that bit. And I'll tell you an interesting story that follow on from that. I've been doing that for about 6 months, and I got into more tunes and different stuff. I was playing at a big nightclub in Windsor, very near Windsor Castle, actually, Royal Borough of Windsor. And anyway, I was playing, and there was an actor called Frankie Vaughan who had his own band called the V-Men. And the drummer, Kenny Hebden, who I knew, I hadn't seen him for a couple of years. Kenny was there. I had to play for a juggling act where you go ding, 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 all that sort of stuff and all that. And the juggling act, there was a rehearsal on the Sunday afternoon, and the juggling act had their rehearsal first. And then Frankie Vaughan brought the band on to do his rehearsal before the show, and I wasn't playing for him, obviously. And I played for this juggling act, and anyway, I had the parts and that. Anyway, and as I was coming off the stage, I walked down the side of the stage. There was an alleyway indoors down the side of the stage, leading to dressing rooms. Kenny Hebden, the drummer with Frankie Vaughan, was coming down the other way. And he said, "Oh, Lloyd, great to see you." So I'll tell you what, Lloyd, he said, "I really adore your drumming." He said, "I couldn't have done that, what you just done." So, what do you mean? He said, "Well, it's like you're playing the tune." And I thought, well, it's working. He never knew that. I thought, wow. He said, "It's like you're playing the tune." I said, "Well, funny you should say that. I've been working on that for the last 6 months in my spare time." He said, "I couldn't believe it." He said, "You were reading the parts, but you were playing 10 times better than the parts, even though you're playing the parts."
Yeah, right.
And I think that was, as you say, the ding of the light bulb in the top of the head comes on. And that for me, that was a pivotal moment, thinking, well, hey, I was on the right track, if you see what I'm saying.
Yeah. And curiously, I did want to ask you too at this point, because you've gone over a lot of stories of a lot of things that a lot of people have been able to like instill knowledge and, give you ideas to help you benefit your drumming. And a big thing now, as we've been reflecting with a lot of the stuff in your career, you are also known as a very, very prolific educator and have some amazing named students that have achieved some amazing things. At what point in your career did you decide that I want to give back the knowledge that I have and start teaching? Was it something that you just did as a little side hustle at the start just to make some coin and kind of grow from there? Or was it like a decision very later on in your career to do that?
I can answer that very, very, very quickly and honestly. My drum teacher, opened up a music shop. A few years later, called me up and said, "You want to do some teaching here to supplement your income?" I never give it a thought. And yet again, you see how it landed on my feet, you see. Magic thing destined to be. So I worked out some basic stuff, but long before I had my tutor book, and long before that, 20, 25, 30 years before that, certainly 25 years before that. And I turned up for the first lesson, and I had about 6 pupils there, you see. It supplemented my income from when gigs were a bit sparse. I could earn £1 a lesson, whatever it was we got in them days, £1.50 or something, whatever it was, $1.50 for lessons, a couple of dollars, whatever it was. So anyway, and in walked a 15-year-old kid, Phil Collins.
Wow.
To have lessons on how to read and to do the rudiments and understand, talking about big band stuff and all that. Then another one who walked in was Graham Broad, who, of course, who ended up playing for so many people. I mean, Roger Waters is one person. He's toured Australia with Roger Waters, I know that. You know, Roger Waters was the Pink Floyd, you know. And Graham's a great player. In fact, Graham decked for Jack Bruno with Tina Turner. He played on Private Dancer, an album called Private Dancer, he was on that. You know, so these people then, Bryson Graham, another lad, was a terrible tragedy with Bryson. Bryson was a very talented rock drummer. And he played in a band called Spooky Tooth, which were really quite a high-profile underground band. Do you know what I mean? They were really good. And he was a very, very good player. And he died at the age of 30 of drug overdose, you know. Terrible. He couldn't get his head together. He was such a nice kid. He was only about 13 when he came to me. So talented. Far more talented than I was at actually playing the drums with the band at that time. I was technically better than all of them, but I couldn't play. I hadn't got to that stage where I could play the drums as a musical instrument rather than something to bash the daylights out. You see what I mean? So,
so how far into your career was this when your teacher opened up the school? How old were you when that happened?
Well, I think I was fairly early, before probably around about 19, 20.
Oh, right.
Maybe a bit earlier, really.
Right.
And I don't know. When Graham Broad was interviewed on a podcast last year, and he said he was asked about where he learned. He said, "I went to Lloyd Ryan. He was a great teacher." He said, "He really taught me well." So I must have had something from the beginning. I didn't think I was much of a teacher, really, CJ, because I couldn't play myself, really. Well, I could, but, you know, technically I was all right, so I was able to do that part of it. But I didn't really feel that I was like qualified to be a good teacher. You know, if someone had come along really, really good, I'd have been blown out of the water, maybe. But maybe not. I don't know. I can't say. It's such a long time ago that you can't go back to the mindset of what you were 40-odd years ago. You know what I'm saying? You can't do that.
You're a completely different person at that point in your
life.
Well,
you are. Yes, exactly. Yes, you are. Yeah. I mean, when I first joined Ken Mackintosh's band, I'd never had a girlfriend, because in those days you didn't have girlfriends at 14 and 15. No. I'd put so much effort into playing the drums that I think people thought maybe, well, he's not interested in women, whatever it was. It wasn't true. I wasn't interested in anything like that. And I met a German girl called Helga, who was a barmaid there, a very attractive girl from Germany, who was 12 years older than me. And she was my first girlfriend. I was 22 in.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. Which
sounds like you just devoted yourself to it. It was like you just lived, ate, breathed everything that you could drumming. You just immersed yourself in it.
Yeah, I focused, you know, I suppose because maybe my son suffers from attention deficiency, ADHD they call it, attention deficiency disorder. I may have well had that, because my son, he's in the wrestling business, David, but he's left. He's now a personal trainer. But he would act a bit dumb. But there was a film on called Snatch, which is a very good film. May have been shown in Australia.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
Alan what's it, the guy who played the bad guy in it with the glasses, was in when I did that show, What a Crazy World. He was one of the chorus guys in that. He went to the same theatre school.
Right.
Yeah, Alan, I can't remember his name now, but he was the bad guy in it. And he has a scene in it talking about Nemesis. He's got these black lads sitting there, these guys who've just done it, and he's sitting them, and he said, and then you meet whatever, you know. My son can recite that word for word, the whole bit.
Right.
The whole script, the whole script. I can't remember Alan's name, but he was one of the lads in the school there when he was about 18. And to see him on there all these years later in such a great part made me laugh. You know, I thought, well, he's not like that at all.
Yeah,
the character he played of beating the dog and all that. He's just a different kind of person to that. And all this, you know. But at the end of the day, I can't remember his name. I think it was Alan. I can't remember now. But Alan Ford, his name, Alan Ford, yeah. But he was in that thing because his name's actually on the program. I've still got the programs from that show. It's got Alan Ford as one of the chorus boys, doing a bit of singing and a bit of running around on the stage and all that. You know, when he first started. I wasn't exactly very friendly with him. Just hello and goodbye. But I mean, you know, that's the link. But so I forgot what your question was before. You said before.
Oh, sorry.
You said about...
with the teaching. So you did start, and you were saying that.
Sorry.
Yeah, you said you didn't really feel like you weren't like as qualified, but
everything
you then progressively worked on in your.
Yes, I did. Yeah, and again, if you like. My life has been a series of things that worked for me, which meant that it was destined. I mean, I've had accidents on the road where I've survived and I shouldn't have survived because I've had to carry on. Because I'm doing good work. I mean, that tutor book of mine, that's an interesting story as well. In the days when this book was first printed, 1981, when it first came out, in those days, you didn't do it yourself books. You didn't have books. You had to go with a publisher. So one or two people said, "You ever thought about writing a book?" I said, "Well, yeah, but it's no point." Anyway, I had a pupil. I was teaching in Covent Garden, the famous Covent Garden in London, in a drum school there. I was a teacher there. And one of my pupils came in and we got chatting after a couple of lessons. And he said, "Have you ever thought about writing a book?" And I said, "Yeah." I said, "But publishers, you know, you're talking about money, big money, you know. That wouldn't work for me." So he said, "Could you write a book if you had a chance?" I said, "Oh, yeah." I said, "Yeah, I could, yeah." I said, "I've got enough knowledge and experience. I could write a book." So, right, okay, never heard any more. 2 weeks later, I get a phone call. And this guy said, "Oh, so-and-so here." He said, "Are you interested in writing a book, drum tutor book?" I said, "Well, yeah." Mr. Haycraft, his name was. He said, "Only I'm the managing director of Duckworth Publishers, and we're prepared to give you a contract to write one." It turned out that pupil was his son.
Oh, wow.
And he went back and said to his dad, "This guy's," because I was getting up, I was quite well known then. I was coming up doing clinics, and I was probably one of the leading drum clinicians and teachers in the country at that point. But I hadn't got a book. And I fell into it. And I got a contract. I got £300 advance. We're talking about 1979 now. And I wrote the book. And it came out and it did okay. And I've still got, it's been reprinted 5 or 6 times. And it never did particularly brilliantly because it was like a manual. It was a book to do it properly. It wasn't learn, you know, didn't doubt straight away. It was learn the rudiments and the reading. And people, you know, for every person that wanted to buy that book, there was 50 that didn't want to buy it. You know, I think it was Mark Twain who said, for anyone who wants to teach, for every person who wants to teach, there's 50 people that don't want to be taught.
Yeah,
and
I'd agree with that 100%.
So the book never really gave me the finance side of it that I might have got out of it. It did okay. It got reviewed. It got on, you know, I did a few radio shows and interviews and things, you know. It did quite well, and it still sells. I've got a guy who distributes it, 1 or 2 here, a couple of copies here, now after all these years, you know. But it never occurred to me to become a millionaire out of it. You know, to do that, you've got to do something gimmicky. You've got to do something that the public want, not necessarily need, but want, musically and education-wise. People are educating themselves now because they know they've got to get qualifications. Otherwise, they're not going to get a job now because it's much harder than it was when I started. So, you know what I mean? Even though they say was it easier years ago, it's always been a tough business. The music business has been tough. I mean, there was a famous actress called Diana Dawes in English. She made some great films down there, but she also did a cabaret act, and I played for her quite a bit. She sang not very well, told a few jokes and all that. But I remember sitting in her dressing room a few times, and she said she was always slagged off because she was the busty blonde, like Marilyn Monroe and like Jane Mansfield, but she was the English version of that. And she was a great actress as well. And she said, interesting thing to me, she said, to be in this business, you've got to develop a skin like a rhinoceros. Otherwise, you're going to fold up. And I think it's very true. I have to say this. I've been slagged off on the internet. I've had people, one or two people say, well, I had lessons of, but I didn't learn anything, waste the money and all that. I've had people say that sometimes. And then I've had other people come and say, I'm the leading drummer in the West End now. If it hadn't have been for Lloyd, I wouldn't be anywhere near this. You know what I mean? So you don't take any notice of it either way, really. Because,
ducks back, mate.
You have 50 reviews where you're brilliant, and you get one where you're no good, and you worry about the one that's no good. CJ, it's negative, you see. Yeah. It doesn't matter what people say. When I was at school, we used to say, sticks and stones may break my bones, but names will never hurt me. And it's true.
Yeah.
It's very, very true. It doesn't matter what people say. You can't please everybody because, and if you're good at something, sometimes people are going to dislike you because you're good at something.
Exactly. But at the end of the day, too, it doesn't really matter because you're not doing it for gratification from other people at the end of the day. You're doing it because you love it and it's what you want to do. Yeah, I never came in the business to make money, really. No,
and one of the things.
Oh, sorry.
I was going to say one of the things when I did a lot of drum clinics was that towards the end of doing these drum clinics, really, because I've not done any for a few years now, I was getting the questions were good questions in the old days. I used to have questionnaires. I used to fill them in. I used to make funny ones up, and all that bit to make people laugh because I thought should always be an entertainment. Drum clinics should be an entertainment because it's boring talking about a 5-stroke roll for half an hour, And I found people asking me the question, "Are you rich? Are you very rich? You're famous in the drum business. But you make a lot of money." I didn't like that. I didn't like that. I used to say to them, "Yeah, but you can't come into this for money because that's already going to you're never going to play good enough." And really, in life, the great wise Red Indian saying is, "You can't eat money." Meaning that there's no food around, nothing around you, you're going to die. So you do it because you want to do it. And if you make money, brilliant. But the best chance of making money was something my dad said. He said, be the best and then you'll always work. Well, of course, there's no such thing as the best. I don't think I was ever the best. I don't think anyone's ever the best. I have to say that, I don't think anyone. So from that point of view, you do it because you want to do it. And if you're good, you'll get the work. If not, you won't.
And curiously too, you did touch on the clinics too. And again, it's not something that just I might be wrong when I say this, but it's not something that just comes along out of nowhere. Too, there has to be someone that got you into the world of clinics, and there had to be a part of your brain that went, I can do this. So how did that happen for yourself?
Well, I can remember it clearly. When I was at school, I used to, in the dormitory in boarding school, which I failed at after a year, got thrown out. I'd be doing, there's a hole in my butt, kit here, Eliza, for all the kids. I was a natural sort of, I'd stand up with the 10 quid, 15, 20 kids in the dormitory, and I would be showing off. I could hold all their interest. I was a bit of a funny comedian, so I was always a little bit of a show off. And I remember when I was teaching in Covent Garden, they had a big showroom. Hold about 100 people. And Eddie Ryan, who was no relation to me, Eddie made drums, had his own drum kits he made, and he made drums for Premier. John Bonham had his stuff and all this, they all used to come into our place there. John Bonham, Carl Palmer, they were always in there. These famous drummers, Louis Belson would be in there, And my teacher's studio was in there. And Eddie said to me one day, why don't you do a drum clinic?
Mm.
And I said, yeah. He said, well, we can do it in the showroom. You can use my drums. You can have my drum kit, promote my drum kit. So we arranged it. He advertised it in the music press. And I worked out a little script, a little idea for what I wanted with a few little jokes and that. Don't forget, I always had above average technique, so I could always hold my own and impress people with that, you see. That was the backbone of it, really. Anyway, come the day, I was very nervous. So I got to my little drum studio, and across the hallway was this great big showroom, the door there. So Eddie came in about 3/4 of an hour before the show, and I got the practice pad, and I'm warming up, you see. He said, you okay? I said, yeah. I said, is it too late to not do it? He said, no. He said, there's 150 people out there.
Oh, wow.
Including Dave Mattox, Jack Parnell, Carl Palmer, the guy with Marillion, the band called Marillion. And I said, what? All these great drummers. Dave Mattox was with Fairport Convention, you know, which I know have been to Australia. I thought, what? And the drummers were on a rostrum with some lights on them, and there's all these people out there. And I walked out there on my own with a microphone and the drum kit. And it was too late to turn back. And it's the loneliest place in the world. Any comedian, and I've worked with some of the greatest comedians in this country, the biggest stars, they all say to me, it's the loneliest place when you're out there. Because when you don't talk, it's silence. And I went out there and I launched into a drum solo with all this fast stuff, and I got a big round of applause. So already people had thought, oh, this guy can actually play. And it went from there. And I did the one. I got through the 2 hours, and I got good applause for it. And people came, well done, Lloyd. And I said, my first one. I told them, I said, it's an experiment tonight. It's my first one. At the end of it, I said, you may not believe that. I've never done one before. And I was having such illustrious people in here today, this afternoon. Phil Collins was going to come, but I know he's rehearsing with the band at the time. But he didn't. He said he would come, but he didn't. But by the end of the day, I got the bug for it. And then I got a chance. Who was it? Slingerland came on to me and said, because I was quite well known then, we're going to put a couple of clinics on. Do you want to do them? And then I got an endorsement deal with a company called Premuco, which were an English drum kit that no one's heard of. They gave me a free drum kit. I did a couple of clinics for them. And then I got Pearl, Yamaha, Slingerland, Premuco, Premier, of course, for 15 years I've been Premier, Sakai, the Korean drum kit. I've had about 7 different endorsements, and every single endorsement you could have. Magic.
Wow.
Magic. It all just came out of nowhere. It was all just, the book, drum clinics. I just walked into it. Now, if that's not an omen, CJ, really.
Yeah.
But the point I have to make to the people starting out there, or the people that are not so experienced or who want to watch this, is that you've got to be good. You get the opportunities, you grab them with both hands. But if you're not good, and I won't mention any names, but there's been 1 or 2 people I've known who teachers and that who are not very good, and they've had all the plugs and they've disappeared. And you've got to be good. If you're good, then you'll get asked back and it'll work. And I can remember when I was with Premier, there was a drummer called Nick Sims, and he was with a band called. They did an album called Brimful of Asher. Corner Shop they were called. I think it was a number 1 in this country. Big record, sold millions of copies. And Nick was a pupil of mine. And I'd been with Premier about 2 years, and he said to me, I think what I told this, I might have told it to you before we're on here. And he said, "Can you get me a deal with Premier? Can you do something with Premier?" And I said, "Well, I can speak to the boss on your behalf. Okay, not a problem." So I rang up Steve Jordan at Premier, the head of Premier, and I said, Nick Sims, I said they're going to be number 1 next week because they're basically Celine Dion was number 1 in the charts with the Titanic theme from the film Titanic, and they were going to knock her off the top point, you see, off the top position. So, which is a good position to be coming up to. They knew they were going to be number one. So I said, Steve, are you up for a deal with him for Premier? He said, no, I'm not. And I said, oh, why is that? He said, well, they're going to be just a one-hit wonder, aren't they? He said, no, I give away 1,000 quid with the drums, and of course they disappear after a couple of songs and never see it again. And I took that on board, and I said to Steve, I said, well, can you tell me then why I've got 4 drum kits? I'm doing 15, 20 drum clinics a year just for Premier, apart from other things. And you've given me all this stuff for nothing. But I've never had a number 1 record. I'm not a pop star. And they said, because you are part of the establishment. The dealers like you. We get better business from you. When you go and do a drum clinic in a shop with 60 people, we end up selling 3 or 4 Janista kits the next day. But when we put Virgil Donati on and people like this on with massive great rigs, 1,000 PA systems that are deafening, it's a show. No one buys anything.
Wow.
No? And he said, we do better with you than anybody.
So my last question, I do want to kind of elaborate a little bit more with this. Obviously, in what you did in your clinics, as you said, you took the approach of being an entertainer as well as not just a drummer, just not being a guy that just gets up and plays. Here's some fancy chops. Thank you very much.
Oh no, don't do that. No.
So what in your especially your very first one that you did, where it was your first time doing it, how did you approach doing it, and did you structure it, or did you kind of
a little bit
wing it a little bit, or?
Yeah, I did. Yeah, I winged it a bit. To be honest, I don't quite remember how I got away with it.
Right.
It was like having your last breakfast before you get home, and then someone says, "Oh, the road's broke. You come back Friday. You have porridge tomorrow if you like." You know what I mean? It's like you're waiting for it to happen. So, but at the end of the day, when I do the jump, I make the entertainment. If anyone asks me how I started, I say, well, I said, that I started off as a poor lad. I said, would you believe this now, looking at me now? I was a really ugly baby. And they go, oh, Lord. I say, yeah, really ugly baby. I say, I was so ugly that when I was born, the midwife slapped me mum. And people, and I do things like that, all that sort of thing, And it's they're not particularly mega funny, but what they are, they're humorous. They're like, I'd say, if people didn't laugh, I'd say we've got comedy this side and tragedy over here. I would make it as I'm one of the guys talking. I can't remember now. I've got a script somewhere that I sort of, I'd read out the questionnaires. I'd say, the questionnaires thing. I read it, but they were fake. I hadn't genuine ones. They were fake. They would say, if you're not the greatest drummer in the world, I'm a Dutchman. Signed by Hans van Gelder. And I'm sorry, I'm not even that. And then I'd say, dear Mr. Ryan, about my daughter. I think I'm not going to throw that away at all. People, it's not hilarious. It's not hilariously funny.
Yeah.
But it's humorous. It breaks the, I say to people when I start off, I suppose you're wondering how long I'm going to be on here. Well, I'll tell you now, if you're a good audience, we do an hour and a half. If you're lousy, I'm going to be here till 10 o'clock tonight. So you better clap and enjoy it. I do things like that. And a lot of these things I got from comedians like Bob Monkhouse and Dave Allen and people like this who I work with. And when I was going to be doing these things, I talked to them about, and they said, you don't want big laughs. You just want small humour things that make people like you. It's about your personality, whether they like it. And I remember when I used to do Cardiff in Wales, the drum shop there, the guy who ran the drum shop used to book me a couple of times a year to come there, independent of Premier. I know I probably used Premier, but I was independent. I don't think he sold Premier, actually. They were independent clinics. And his dad used to say to me, I come to watch you on your drum clinics. I don't play the drums. I'm not interested in drums. I love you winding up the crowd. So I just love it when you make them laugh, he said, and he said, I just find it so entertaining. He said, you should be a stand-up comic. But there's very different in being a stand-up comic and having to be funny and being someone that's got you're there to help people with the drums, and you can be funny as well as that. I would say, I'm now going to demonstrate the double stroke roll. And I say, and there's very few people that can play this really fast. And right now, everybody, I wish I was one of them. You know, I don't make people laugh. And then, of course, I'd end up going blinding speed, you know, and they go, oh, yeah. And all that sort of stuff. Really, because most people can't get to that speed of a double stroke. It's very, very hard to do that as a double stroke roll. You know, it's really extremely difficult. And I don't know how to do it. I don't really know how to do it. People say, can you show me how to do it? I can show you how to play it. Yeah, but whether you'll reach that kind of speed or not does depend on your makeup, your hands, the way you are as a person. There's so many things that you can't do. I said, but what you've got to remember, and this is another one for your people as well, you do what you can do. Don't try and do what you can't do because you're physically not able. Do what you do because people will buy you. They'll buy you. They'll buy CJ if you play something better than me. And you say, well, I can't play as good as Lloyd. So yeah, but CJ, we want you as a drummer, not Lloyd. We want you to play like him. Play like, you know, don't play like Steve Gadd. Don't play like all these guys. Play like you. Yeah. That's what we're playing. Because you've got to remember, one of the important things, this is an important point, that when in the old days, we go for a recording session, a lot of the attitude in England was, can you sound like so-and-so? Can you sound like so-and-so? But the drummers like Jeff Porcaro, Steve Gadd, Dave Weckl, Vinnie Colaiuta, they were booked because they were Vinnie Colaiuta, Dave Weckl. Are you with me? They weren't booked to play. Jeff Porcaro wasn't booked to play like Vinnie Colaiuta or somebody else. He booked to play like Jeff Porcaro. And so what happens is when they make these recordings, Steve Gadd and that, they sound like Steve Gadd. They play relaxed because they're playing what they feel comfortable with. And then someone hears the record and thinks, wow, listen to that. But it's just luck. The luck is having the right person as the producer to say, Steve, do what you like, mate. If we don't like it, we'll try something else. And I believe I saw something on the internet with Jeff Porcaro. Somebody who was a big fan of Jeff Porcaro, was a bass player who worked with him, said that Jeff would go to a recording studio to do a recording session. I'm not sure that would be Toto and all that. He went as a session man. He did a lot of sessions. And it'd be a song that he wasn't sure about. And he would say, look, I don't think I can do a good job on this, but I know somebody who can. Give them a call because they need the money. They're out of work at the moment. That's the kind of guy he was. And he would say, and he would give the guys the phone number and recommend this guy. And they'd shut the session down for a couple of hours and get him in because he said, I don't feel comfortable with this. I don't feel I'm doing the job I feel comfortable with. Now, that takes a big man to do that.
Huge. That's zero ego right there to do that.
And that's the reason why he really did the things that he felt comfortable with. So he sounded so good. Yeah.
Wow. That's amazing.
You know what I mean? And you're playing with people you don't feel comfortable with sometimes, so you can't sound that good. Do you remember a drummer called John Heisman?
Yes.
John, a great drummer. I knew John quite well, actually. In fact, he reviewed the book for Melody Maker. He reviewed my book. And it was really funny because when I saw him, he said, love the book, he said. I only wish I could play it all. I said, me too. But he said to me, we've had a drummers reunion sort of thing in London with Foot's Music, like 100 drummers there, and I was one of the guests, and he was as well. And he'd chatting to me, he'd come over and talk to me, and he said a drummer is only as good as the band, and the band's only as good as the drummer. So it's a catch-22 situation. If you play something in a band that's not very good, you're going to stick out like a sore thumb. Doesn't fit. When you've got people that listen and play along with you, it works.
Yeah, wow.
Because music is, I believe, my little saying is, imperfection is perfection. What is real? What is perfection? Is this room square? Is your curtain perfect? Are you perfect?
No.
I can answer that. No, you ain't. Right, anyway.
You don't need my answer, mate. You know the answer already.
I've only ever seen you, Ed. Anyway, basically.
I can stand up if you like, but yeah.
Oh, no, I'd rather you didn't. Anyway.
Yeah, you don't know what's under here, mate.
No, well, no, we don't want to put the audience off, do we? But
No,
seriously, all jokes aside, what is perfection? I mean, people like Miles Davis, musicians like Miles Davis, were looking for just the play. He would say to Tony Williams, "Just play, man." 17-year-old Tony Williams, "I'm not telling you what to do. Do what you think's right. If it ain't any good, you ain't got the job." And Tony Williams would just feel free to do what he liked, shit or bust, as they used to say. You know what I mean? You can cut that out if you like.
No, that's a great saying. I'm taking that.
But that's really what it is in England. People say that, and I think that really being allowed to do what you can do brings out the best in you. You look at all the famous drummers like Louis Bellson, Gene Krupa, Buddy Rich, and Tony Williams, who's one of my favourites. They were all in bands where the band leaders featured them, didn't keep them down. Benny Goodman with Gene Krupa, Duke Ellington with Louis Bellson. Who was it? Harry James with Buddy. They featured, gave them 15-minute drum features, so they got a chart. They recorded them with drum features. So it meant that they got around the world. Everyone knew who they were. They could have just been. I mean, another great drummer was Alvin Stoller. Alvin Stoller took over from Buddy Rich in one of those big bands, and he was very good. In some ways, I liked him better. But sometimes you miss an opportunity. I mean, a drummer called Jake Hanna. Do you know Jake? Do you remember Jake Hanna with Woody Herman's band? Great drummer.
Oh, it rings a bell.
Jake,
yeah,
great drummer. He came into my studio in London, into that workshop where they were making drums. And Jack Parnell brought him in, and Jack Parnell took him into the showroom and showed him Eddie Ryan's kit, the Eddie Ryan kit he was making. So I was there, and so Jack said to Jake, "Lloyd, play so Jake can hear the kit." And I did a roar around the kit for a couple of minutes. Fine, thanks very much. I went back to my pupil. I found out that Jake said to Jack Parnell many years later, that guy should go to America. He'd do very well in America. He's very good, isn't he? I never knew that. So that was a lost opportunity. I never followed it. I should have left England, really, because the Americans have a much... I mean, you're close to America where you are, because of course we're not, but you're fairly close in comparison. But really, when you think about it, that American thing, they have this, "Yeah, man, you're great." If I have a rehearsal with the band and they're all silent, I feel like getting a flamethrower and going, waking them all up. You know what I mean? Because it don't seem to be very much. Was it all right? Yeah, it was okay. Yeah, not bad. Yeah. In America, wow, man, what a great player. That was good. You did.
Yeah.
I because I work with American acts. I mean, that Korean Kittens were an American act.
Yeah.
And the moment I played, they said, "Man, we're flying when you play." They tell you.
Yeah.
Over here, it's all very the British stiff up. Yeah, there's none of that. Over here, it's all like, yes, it's good. Yeah. So you sure? Bend over and I'll give you a good kick up the backside, to wake you up.
You want to tell me how you really feel now?
Yeah. Oh, that was good.
Oh wow, Lloyd, I wanna wrap that one up there today, mate. And
otherwise I'll be on there for about 12 hours. It's
I could talk with you for hours and just hear all of these stories. And I guess what I would love to do is maybe in another couple of months get you back and we can talk some more about a lot of things, because I know we've only just scratched the surface on a lot of things in your career and a lot of lessons that you've learned. And you've shared some amazing things with us today. And despite the internet with where it was when we started to where we are now, we're smooth sailing now, which is great. So
can I just add one thing, if I may?
Sure, absolutely.
A little plug for what we talked about a couple of weeks back about me doing some Zoom lessons for your people, through your management, through your company as such. We're working from my book, maybe, or whatever book they've got. If I may have the same book, it's a possibility, and I hope that maybe that will happen.
Yes, I would very much like to explore that option, because I feel, even though we've been talking for about an hour and 50 minutes now, I feel like even in an hour or even a half an hour lesson with someone like yourself, I feel is just such a pool of knowledge and wisdom, and not only that, but some really funny stories too. So I like it's something I do want to work towards very soon is being able to open up some lessons through Behind the Break with Lloyd. So if you are interested or you do want to do that, please don't hesitate to get in touch with myself. Because I feel like like even just getting to talk to you, I haven't even had a lesson with you, which one day very soon I'm going to ask to do that with you myself. But I would encourage other people to do so as well, because I just feel like the knowledge that you would get out of this, and I especially think at the end of this podcast by now, people are going to have to rewind and go back and listen to certain parts over and over and over and over. So if you do want to get some lessons with Lloyd, please don't hesitate to reach out to myself via any of the social media stuff through the podcast, or go to the Nash management pages or the CJ the Pineapple pages. And we will definitely tee something up with Lloyd. We're definitely hoping to be able to get that started up very soon.
You do realise, of course, that I'm going to have to get up very early, probably about 7 o'clock in the morning to do it, because you're 9 hours ahead, aren't you? So
yeah,
otherwise it would be like 1 o'clock in the morning they're having their lessons, you know.
Well, we'll see what we can tee up with.
I'm sure we'll work something. I'm sure your
work
knowledge
something
of
out.
Country is far more than mine, of course, being as you're a native, as it were.
Look, we'll set a limit. Put it this way: what time does the sun get up? And we'll make it an hour earlier, just to be nice.
No, I'm quite happy to get up. I mean, I get up about 7. The last time I got up at 7 in the morning was when I did a paper round when I was about 15.
And it comes full circle. It comes full circle.
No, I'm
doing a paper round, but it's just drum sheet music this time. There's no newspapers, mate.
I should look forward to hearing the feedback from this, actually. I hope I haven't waffled on too long.
Not at all. Not at all.
Hopefully, it would be great to meet some of you out there as well on the Zoom, and maybe possibly come out to Australia sometimes. I have been before, you know, and I have to say I've been to Melbourne and Sydney, and I've got to say it rained both times. So I'm not too happy about the weather, but which I believe to be 24/7 sunshine, but of course it ain't, is it?
Yeah. Well, mate, hopefully we can get you down here sometime soon. I think that would be
brilliant. But anyway, that's small steps.
Yes, small steps, absolutely. So right now, if you are interested, though, as I said, please reach out to the podcast or the Nash management page, or the CJ the Pineapple Drummer page, and we are more than happy to accommodate and get in touch with Lloyd and make it happen. So until then, Lloyd, big thank you for your time, mate. I really, really genuinely appreciate it. And yeah, we'll definitely be chatting about getting you back on the podcast in another couple of months, mate, for sure.
Thank you so much for asking me, and you know, I have to say I'm honoured really to think you want me to do it. So what can I say?
Mate, we're both in the same boat then, because I feel exactly the same.
Don't we say bye-bye? Bye-bye in English means goodbye.
Let me translate for you.
Yes. Bye.
Alrighty, guys. See you later. We'll talk soon.